Hello guys, my name is Dima and this is my first ever tutorial, so please bear with me if I make some mistakes or pauses. Also, I haven't spoken English for about 2 or 3 years now, so if I sometimes forget some words, please excuse me. So this is the image that we are going to be creating in Cinema 4D. Actually, it's not my original idea. I saw this image, here is the original. It was posted by Rich Nosworthy. Hopefully I pronounce his name correctly. And thank you, Rich, for giving me the permission to use your image as reference for this tutorial. Actually, if you haven't heard about Rich, I'm sure you have, but if you haven't, check him out. He's a very cool guy and shares a lot of useful and inspirational work. So, let's get back to our image. Let's first analyze. The idea for this tutorial came when I saw that image posted by Rich, and I thought I would try to recreate it using the skills and knowledge that I have. And this is what I came up with. And along the way, I learned some cool stuff, so I decided I would make a tutorial on that. So we have a bunch of triangles which are shaped in this kind of noisy or terrain-like shape. And there are some sticks with spheres on each polygon, on each triangle here, and some wires. We will create them using hair, and also a studio background. So let's jump back into Cinema 4D and let's get started. This is the final scene that I have, but we will start from scratch. If you see the grid and want to get rid of it, you can go to Filter and uncheck grid here. So let's get started with the plane. We will need, actually I have already created it, so I know the width and height and segments for sure. This will be 800 by 200, 11 by 3. And well, you can change the settings, but the idea here is to get these square segments. You don't have to be perfect, but the more square they look, the more like equal the triangles will be later. So this is looking good. We will make it editable by hitting C or hitting this button here. Let's go into the polygon mode. Command A or Control A in PC to select all the polygons, right click and triangulate. Now we have a bunch of triangles, but without gaps. Now we will create a copy of this plane. So let's go to Object Mode, Command C, Command V. And on this plane, we will hide this guy for now. I hold down Alt and double click on these traffic lights. And to create the gaps on the second plane, we'll go back to the polygon mode, Command A to select everything, right click, Extrude Inner, and Apply. But we don't have the gaps, we receive some kind of frame here. This is because of the preserve groups. If we uncheck it, we get the gaps. This is too much, so let's get down the offset to something like 2. This is looking better. Now hit UI on the keyboard. This is the shortcut for inverting the selection. And let's delete the gaps. Now we are left with some spare points. So let's go to the point mode, Command A to select everything. Right click. I have this button here for quick access. If you don't have, right click simply and go optimize. And now we got rid of those points. So now we have a bunch of triangles. This is what we wanted, but they are flat. So we will add some depth using close. So we'll add ClosedNURBS. By the way, I'm using Cinema 4D version 14, if you are interested. So we will drop it here, go to the ClosedNURBS, drop down the subdivisions to 0, and thickness, let's add something like 3. This is looking good. Now, actually, why I created a copy of this plane? Let's name it triangles. and this plane will be modifier. I will show you this. Right now, so you can see the difference. So why I created and why I chose this method for creating this image. So I will get rid of the ClosedNURBS for now to get this flat. Unhide the modifier for now. Let's make actually a copy of it and hide this guy. Hit E for the move tool. Now you see we have here gaps, and we don't have gaps here, but if we go to Display Guardian Shading Lines, we can see that triangles are pretty much the same, but here we have gaps and here we don't have gaps. So if we apply the same modifier, we will be using Displacer. Here it is. Let's drop it here in this modifier, and let's apply some shader, some noise. You can see the deformation happening, but it's subtle, so let's go to the object and adjust the height to something bigger, like 100, something like that. And you see this creates some pretty smooth, well, not smooth, but organic motion. I will apply the same Displacer modifier to the triangles with gaps, and you will see the difference. You see, these triangles break down. This is happening because the scale of the noise is not too big in this example. And what is happening is that the displacer is moving points actually. And these polygons, these triangles are disconnected from each other. So if we go and lower the height here, you see that this point can go up, and this point of this triangle can go down, and this point goes way down, this way it goes up, and this creates, it breaks actually the look. We don't have the look like we have here. Like we have here, it's something like wave or terrain, and here on the other hand, we have this effect. This is happening because all the triangles, all the segments are connected, and this point actually is connected to all the triangles surrounding it. So if it moves, all the triangles move in the same direction and trying to face this point. So to get the same look here, we will use a modifier called surface. Here it is. And what it does, I will show you in a second. We will delete this modifier. It was for example. And delete this displacer. So we have two planes, one with triangles with gaps, and the other I will unhide it without gaps. You see it here. And the target is here to apply all the modifications to this plane without gaps and make these triangles with gaps follow. So we will apply to the triangles with gaps a modifier called surface, drop it on the triangles, and the surface we will use modifier, our plane. We can unhide the triangles and actually hide the modifier here. And now we hit initialize, and that is it. Now all the deformations and modifications we apply to this plane will be repeating on this plane. Now they are like stitched together, so you can imagine that this plane is laying on this, and for example it's like some kind of cloth, yeah, and if you pull this point here, so these triangles align on this cloth, so they will go up here also. So you will see the effect in a second. Let's apply Displacer, apply to the modifier, and actually cool stuff about modifiers is that you can layer them as many as you want. You can duplicate some displacers, several of them, apply different noises, different gradients, for example, and then get the effect that you're looking for. We'll apply the gradient now. Actually, you know, let's get rid of the font text. We don't need any smoothing here. And in the displacer, we will increase the height. You can see the effect. It's going from black to white, black down, white up. And we will change it actually to circular, to the circular gradient. And you see the surface modifier needs some time to update sometimes, so if you make some modifications and don't see it update, just move the viewport. You see jumps, it will be happening, but hopefully it will not be that big of a problem. So this is what we get. And actually, let's turn off Displacer for now. Let's make this row, this middle row, a bit higher. So we will go to this modifier, unhide it for a second, go to the polygon mode, hit 9, this is the shortcut for live selection, and select this middle part. Let's move it up a bit, something like this, hit T, and scale it this way to preserve the square shape of the polygons or the segments. Something like this. And you see that these triangles repeat all the motions, all the modifications, and it's cool. So we will turn the displacer back on and hide the modifier plane. Now we run into a bit of a problem here. You see it deforms not only in on the Y axis, but also on Z. This is happening because in the displacer, under the object, we have direction set to vertex normal, and we moved the vertices. Now they are facing this row. Direction is different from this row's direction, so we will change the direction under the displacer to planar, and change it from X plus to Y. Oops, Y plus. Yeah, here we go. And now you see from the top view we preserve the rectangular shape, and all the deformations are happening only on Y axis. And this is what we want, but we want the opposite. We want this middle part to go up, so we will invert the height, something like this, and also maybe change it to intensity. Here, this is looking a bit better. So something like this. And let's now apply some noise. So let's duplicate this displacer, go to shading and change shader to noise. Let's play with the noise settings. Let's change this to something like turbulence, this kind, for example. Let's increase the global size to something like 1200. You see jumps, need some time to update. Let's increase maybe the contrast a bit, and go to the displacer objects and make the height positive. This is looking good. Let's turn on ClosedNURBS to see it's actually with depth on the triangles. And this is looking good. Well, you can layer several displacers, you can add another modifiers, and cool stuff about it is that there are several ways to animate this also. You can, for example, animate the noise itself. In the noise settings you can go to animation speed, hit for example 1 here, hit play, and now you're animating this stuff pretty easily. Also, Displacer modifier has fall off, so for example if we don't want noise on all the surface, we can constrain it, or actually limit it to particular part of this plane. So we'll go to fall off and choose sphere, for example, and you see that we'll increase the scale. Here we go, and we'll make it visible. You see where this fall off, this sphere represents fall off, where the fall off is happening, the noise is happening, and there is no sphere. The sphere does not intersect with plane here, so there is no noise. And you can also animate the sphere and create something like this. Well, there is a whole lot of possibilities with this technique. But we are creating the still image, so we will get back to infinite. We turned off the animation in the noise. and this is what we get. Looking pretty good. So now we will add some sticks. Actually, you know, this surface modifier works. It requires a lot of RAM, I believe, and sometimes when you get like pretty complex, your machine can start slowing down, and this can happen with my machine because I don't have a very powerful laptop. It's pretty old, so I will actually go to the triangles, right click, and get current state object, and I will get rid of those modifiers so it don't load my RAM that much. So we now what we did, we actually made all those transformations and modifications into a like single geometry, solid one. We cannot change it anymore, but for the purpose of this tutorial I showed you everything I wanted to show, and we are creating the still image. So let's continue. Let's get the stick. Let's hide this guy for now. Let's create a stick. This will be a simple cylinder. Let's get it. The radius is something like 1.5, pretty thin, and the height is something like 20, maybe more, maybe 30. Let's get a sphere. Here we go. Let's get the radius down to 3, or maybe 4, and move it up on the stick. Now let's select both of them. Alt G on the keyboard to group, to create a group. Let's call it stick. Now with it selected, hold down Alt, go to MoGraph, cloner, and it automatically has been added to the cloner as the child. So in the cloner we will change the mode to object, because you remember we need the sticks on every polygon, every triangle here. So, and as the object we will use triangles. Now notice that we are using triangles but not the ClosedNURBS. If you apply actually ClosedNURBS, we will run into a problem where you see the ClosedNURBS adds depth, and it actually adds extra polygons. So for example, if we go into cloner now, we will actually be using distribution, not vertex. You see the sticks are now on vertices. We will use polygon center, and you see now all the sticks are in the center of every triangle, and it's facing the wrong way, so we'll go to transform -90 to make it face the right direction, yes, and on the Z we will move it up a bit so they are not intersecting. This is looking good. We get some kind of a hedgehog here, something like this. Let's actually go to gradient shading. And or voodoo, you know, voodoo doll, something like needles in it. Now, why we don't use the ClosedNURBS as the object in the cloner? This is because you see, we now, if we turn off ClosedNURBS, we get these flat triangles, and every triangle has a stick in it. But if we apply ClosedNURBS, actually, it will get sticks on all these extra polygons that it creates, on this back and on this side, on this side. So we don't want that, so we applied triangles. Actually, the hairs will be applied also to the triangles. This way we will limit the hairs also only to this top part. Actually, we can, yeah, actually we'll go and create hair right now. So let's check triangles geometry here and go to simulate hair object, add hair. Now we have added hairs. You see that they are also distributed on the vertices. Let's change it here. On the object called hair, we will go to guides, and here root we will change from polygon vertex to polygon area. this will distribute them randomly on the polygons. We will change the length to something like 400. This creates a lot of wires, a lot of hairs. We will drop down the count to something like 80, and in the hairs we have the count of hairs 5,000. This will be too much. We will lower this down to the actual count of guides. This is 80, so there will be single hair on single guide. Now if we hit play, they're falling, and this is looking good. Well, actually I want them to be maybe less or more stiff, I don't know. By increasing the number of segments in guides, so you see by default we have 8, and this is what it creates. Actually, let's increase the number of frames to 300, so we have a lot of room to play and simulate. You see, they I think this is called stiff, yeah. So they are they are very stiff here. So to make them less stiff, we'll increase the number of segments to something like, for example, 16. Now you see they're acting more like actual hairs. I don't know. Well, acting less stiff. We run into a bit of a problem here. We are starting to intersect with this geometry. And actually what I want, I will create a studio, and I want these hairs to collide with the floor here down. So let's fix this. Let's create a studio first of all. Let's create a plane. And drop it down to somewhere like here, I believe. And hit T, shortcut for scaling. Scale it up a bunch. And go up here, scale it something more. Let's drop down the number of segments to 0. Actually one by one. And hit C to make it editable. Hit T once again for scaling. We'll go to the object mode and scale this up this way. Now we will go to the edge mode, select this edge, and we will hit E for moving. If we hold down Command or Control on PC, you can drag and extract this edge. Maybe a bit lower. Now we will select this edge, hit MS, or right click and select bevel, and we will bevel this edge once, and the selection stays, so we have 2 edges selected, and we will bevel them once again, just a little bit, something like this. We are kind of creating even polygons here. Now we will apply. If we hold down Alt, we'll hit on HyperNURBS, and this plane will be edited automatically as child of HyperNURBS, and we get the studio here. This is looking pretty good. Now, to make the hairs collide with geometry, we actually need a tag called hair collider. Also, let's maybe create our final camera now. Let's make it something like this. Create a camera, right click on it, signal for the tags, and let's apply protection tag. So now if we go to the camera, we don't have the ability to move it. Well, we won't screw up the view that we have chosen. Let's go back from the camera. And now we will select all the geometry that needs, actually all the geometry in this scene needs hair collider tag. So we'll right click, go to hair tags, and choose hair collider, and it adds, actually we don't need it on camera, and it adds on all this stuff. I believe it won't work properly on ClosedNURBS, or it will. Let's check it. Actually, with hairs I don't have, I can't receive very precise like dynamics. Even if in hairs I go to the dynamics, and here in advanced I increase steps and iterations, it actually keeps intersecting with these triangles here. With the floor, well, I don't get such problems. Let's rewind and hit play. You see hairs are colliding with the floor. But here you see it intersects actually the triangles. And I have played a lot. I tried increasing the iterations and steps, but it doesn't seem to help. If anybody knows, if anybody knows how to fix this problem, which settings to edit, to play with, please tell me in the comments. I will appreciate it a lot. So we're getting the final look, plus and minus what we want. So let's hit render to see what we get now. Something like this. You see the problem with hairs, they are looking jaggy. The way to fix this is go to hair, and we are not going to adjust the segments of the spline themselves because this will affect the simulation. The way to do this is to go into hairs and adjust the number of segments here. So we will type in something like 40, hit render, and you see now they're smooth and nice. Let's go into the hair material. Let's adjust the color. Let's get rid of the second node to delete the ramp or gradient here and make it something like this magenta, reddish, pinkish color, something like this. Adjust also the thickness. The tip will make it 0.5, so they look more like kind of wires. Hit render. This is what you get. And for the materials, for the rest of the materials, I will actually copy them from my final scene, and I will explain you how I created them. They're very, very simple. So we copy them, go here, paste. So let's start with the gold material and apply it to the sticks. It is our cloner. And golden material is simply, I have only color and reflections activated, so color is this golden color, 19% of brightness, and reflection is simple reflection without Fresnel in here, so we have no textures here. The brightness is set to something like 82, and the color is this yellowish kind. And it creates, so we don't actually now have what to reflect, so they look pretty dull, but as soon as we add the sky and add some HDRI, they will reflect it and will look nice. Now let's add material to our plane, our triangles. This is also pretty simple. This has some light gray color in color mode, in color channel, and in reflections we have a Fresnel, and its brightness and mix strengths are set pretty low, so we don't have harsh reflections, but just a bit of them. And we will also apply our material to the studio, which is this one. Sorry. We will change, you see, the projection is screwed up, so we will choose the material here, go to the projection and change it to cubic. And you see we have a lot of like repetition styles. We will drop them down to maybe 0.25, 0.25, and this is, I think, looks better. Let's go into the material. I will show you. It has color, bump, and specular. Actually, I could use like reflections, but it would take, I believe, a bit longer to calculate. I just wanted some effects like the light hitting the background, so I just use specular is actually like fake reflections. So this is what I used. And one more thing to be noted is that Rich actually used V-Ray for Cinema 4D to render this scene, and I used a built-in physical renderer to get this effect. Actually, I recently got V-Ray for Cinema 4D, but I didn't have enough time to get acquainted with it enough to like to teach you something and to use it properly and flawlessly. So I will use, actually I used physical renderer, and the cool stuff about physical renderer is that you have presets here. So you go to physical, choose it. We have sample quality, and if you choose medium, this most of the times this is pretty much enough for rendering a pretty good scene, which will be noise free and pretty smooth. But if you want to go more in depth, there are a couple of tutorials online on physical renderer, which, well, if you want, you can learn how to optimize it the way you want. Now for this material, this is the material of concrete. In color, I loaded a texture. Actually, I found this texture watching the tutorial by Curse Studio, where he was teaching how to light the exterior scene using V-Ray for Cinema 4D, and I believe he found those textures on Flickr. So this is simply the texture. I will open it in separate window. The texture of concrete blocks, you see them here. And in bump channel, it has the same texture, just black and white. Open it up, black and white, to create some illusion of depths, so like separations and these dots. And specular is set to plastic, 75 width, height 15, and 0 fall off, to create just a bit of illusion that it reflects the light, reflects something. And this is all. We applied everything. Let's add several lights. Let's go actually into our camera. We haven't moved, so it doesn't change. I will be using Grayscale Gorillas Light Kit Pro. We will add overhead softbox and softbox. Go to Object Manager here. Actually didn't add softbox. Double click. Yep. Now let's change settings for the overhead softbox. We will uncheck Sync by Camera, and we will increase the brightness to something like 150. And this softbox, let's actually go out of the camera to see where this softbox is. So it is here. It's pretty small, so let's actually increase it. Increase its size, overall scale, and set it to pretty high values here, like 300, and increase the distance, something like this. Change the color to make it a bit of yellowish to create some variation in lighting, orange like, and drop down the brightness to 90% maybe, and let's uncheck Sync by Camera. Here now let's duplicate it, Command C, Command V, move it in different direction. You can use this dot or just use these values. I will move it on X to get the different position for it. Let's place it somewhere like from the back a little bit. It won't be seen in the render because we unchecked Sync by Camera. And change the color to something like maybe this purple bluish, like something like that. Let's decrease the distance to a little bit closer maybe, and actually decrease the brightness to something like 60, maybe 70. And this is looking better. Now let's get back to our camera. Let's render with the standard to see what we get, a kind of preview of what we get. And you see now that we have lights, we start to see the gold a bit better. And actually one thing I forgot to do, I wanted to add the sky object to get some overall like atmosphere and reflections. So let's do this. Let's add sky object, get new material, apply it to the sky, go into that material, uncheck color and specula. We will be using only luminance here. And let's go to the desktop. I actually have this HDRI I found online. No, we don't need. Now it needs some time to load it because it's pretty huge. It's in the photo of some night city. I really like it. We'll go inside and change the color profile to sRGB and maybe increase the exposure a bit, something like 2 or maybe 1.5, and let's hit render once again. And I think we have a little too much like yellow light here, you see. So we will maybe increase the brightness of the second softbox, which is purple bluish. Actually make it darker and increase the brightness to something like 100. Here hit render. Well, I think this is looking pretty good. You see that my computer, it takes my computer a lot of time to calculate even with the standard renderer. So I will only show you the settings for the physical renderer in my final scene. So let's jump back into it. Let's jump back to my final scene here. And my final settings were like, I think I adjusted some settings here, but I started, I believe, with the medium sampling quality preset here. And I enabled also indirect illumination to get some light from the HDRI surrounding it. And you can see the final result here. It took actually, I believe, 1.5 hours to render this image. Well, I think this is it. That's all that I wanted to tell you about. Hopefully it was not that bad. If you have any questions or any suggestions for the future tutorials, well, write in the comments or write to my email. I will try to answer you and help you if you have some problems. Once again, thank you, Rich, for giving the permission to use your image for reference. And I think that is all, guys. Thank you for watching. Bye.